Brock Austin Tucker died mere weeks before his 19th birthday. Tucker had a traumatic brain injury during childhood and spent much of his youth in abusive youth facilities, including Provo Canyon School. In 2012, he attempted to escape one of these facilities and was given a choice of facing criminal charges as an adult or returning to the program. He chose prison, believing it would be better than spending one more second in the program. He was expecting to be released soon because he had a parole hearing coming up in December 2014. He was sent to Central Utah Correctional Facility in Gunnison, Utah. The reform model used at the Gunnison facility was designed by an Aspen Ranch representative. While Tucker's death is reportedly a suicide, his family and Heal believe that foul play may have been involved. Alec Lansing, age 17, died of hypothermia and broken hips in November while enrolled at Trails Carolina, a wilderness program operating in Lake Toxaway, North Carolina. We have no further information on the investigation at this time. We will keep you posted with any updates. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, is this Sharon?
Yes.
Hi, Sharon. It's Angela with Heal. So I'm calling you to do the telephone interview for the report on Jill.
It was funny. I found that photo that I sent you of Jill, and in that photo, I was 36, the same age she was when she died.
Wow.
We were on our way back from Teen Challenge. In that photo, my husband and I had, like I said earlier, they were trying to send her to New Mexico, so we drove up to North Carolina and got her. And my grandmother lived in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, so we were staying at a motel there, and that's where that was snapped at, was at the motel right on the way back.
Wow. How old was she?
Let's see, she was either 14 or 15. She was 14 when she went in, and I can't remember it. I don't think she had her birthday there. I think we got her out before her birthday, so she would have been 14.
Okay. And they had adults at this facility as well as teens? That's what Jill reported.
She said they did. I didn't see too many of the people there, but she said there were adults there because she had described one lady who was acting really crazy, going around the backyard, just like reaching her hands up in the air, clapping them like she was trying to catch butterflies or something that were non-existent, as though the lady were hallucinating.
Oh, wow. She probably needed proper detox.
Probably. I was sitting at her house when she typed that one out back in '09. We had been talking about cults and the definition of a cult and everything, and she's like, wow, that's what Teen Challenge was.
Right.
And that was when the conversation started. Up until that point, I didn't realize what she had been through.
Oh, wow.
I knew she'd been through a lot there and that it wasn't that good, but I didn't know exactly how bad it was until then.
Whatever you want to talk about is fine. Of course, I want to know more about anything you might remember about what she told you about Teen Challenge, and I have questions prepared if you aren't sure a topic. What
I can't remember the exact dates that she went into Teen Challenge or came out. Let's see, she was only there 6 months, and the year would have been, let's see, she was born in 77 and she was 14.
91?
90, it would have been either 1991 or 92. It was in that area.
Okay.
I don't have anything written down on Teen Challenge on that experience. I'm divorced from that husband now, and unfortunately a lot of the things, paperwork and things I had were left behind in his house.
That's okay. Do you remember do you know what day she died?
She died June 27th of this year.
Okay.
Okay, and then one thing that's going to be, I guess it'll be in the interview, and I will need to make sure that my mother is evil enough. She would try and sue me for slander, but it's an actual fact, is when I was 15, my mother threw me out at the wish of her new husband. And Joe even included that in the email about the ancient history of our family. And my mother is very worried about her status with the Catholic Church and what people think of her. Chances are she would never see the HEAL report, but if she did, I just have to make sure everything I say is true on there so that it's not slanderous.
Right.
But if it's the truth, it's not slander, and it is the truth. That did happen. And she was the one that when Jill ran away, she went to our church down here, and the pastor of the church recommended Teen Challenge. And my mother just really pushed me. She just about had a fit when I took Jill out of Teen Challenge.
Was this a Catholic church that recommended
No,
it?
my mother. It was a Pentecostal. They're either Pentecostal or Assemblies of God.
Okay, I would be surprised if they weren't Assemblies of God because they actually run the Teen Challenge programs. It's a branch of that church, the Assemblies of God. So that's why I wanted to clarify for you if it was that.
Yeah, that was what it was, and they might have. I don't know if the church did it thinking it really would be the best thing, or if I don't know what was going on. I was just kind of at my wit's end. Jill was having problems, but the thing is, all teenagers have problems.
Right. It's a tough time.
Yeah, it is. Their hormones are changing. Yeah, you get any 13 or 14-year-old. I don't care if it's. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry, that was my boss telling me I'm off tomorrow, thank God. Anyway, I forgot where I was at now on this. About my mother going to the church, and I was kind of at my wits' end. Jill was not a horrible child or anything like that, but teenagers just by nature are very aggravating. You take any 13, 14-year-old kid, you take them shopping, they want you to buy them everything in the store, they run away from home, they smoke cigarettes, they're just normal kids. It's part of being a kid. I did the same thing, most kids do, and these parents, they just, sometimes you're just at your wit's end as to what to do. And I had just met my second husband, and him and Joe were fighting a lot.
No.
But no one should ever. He didn't demand that she go to Teen Challenge or anything like that. In fact, he was the one that insisted she be pulled out of there. But nobody should ever just send their child away unless it's absolute.
Right. So, what do you want to discuss? What happened with you? Did you want to discuss your situation with your mother when you were a teenager? Where did she send you? Did you end up in a boarding school or anything like that?
Fortunately, not. When I was 13 when my mother remarried. The family was dysfunctional. My stepfather was a psychologist, very prominent. He didn't want me or my sister. For some reason, he wanted to keep my brother. I was the oldest, so he started in on me first with different things that I did wrong. One of them was that I was overweight. He starved me to the point that I now have a pretty serious eating disorder.
Wow.
He kept everything I did was wrong. I just couldn't do anything to please him. He tried to have me sent to the Girls Ranch in California. I don't know if you're familiar with it or if it's still there. It's for girls who have been in and out of the juvenile programs, but the trouble is I hadn't committed any crimes.
Right.
So they wouldn't take me. In the end, I was sent to live with my grandmother. Then I was sent to live with my dad, and when I was 18, my dad told me I just had to get a job and be on my own.
Wow.
So, and my dad was never home. It wasn't that he was a poor father. He worked for Lockheed. He was gone a lot. They would send him on business trips. So I grew up running the streets in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's how come, like in a lot of my letters, you'll see me state I grew up on the streets, and I was familiar with the counterculture in California in the 70s.
Yeah.
But my mother basically would go along with anything my stepfather said, and she just came into my room one day and told me to pack up, that I was getting on a plane. And I think I had a couple of days to pack a suitcase, and I was out of there. They just threw me away, and she didn't see me again except for one short visit until Jill was 3 years old. They had moved to Florida. I had grown up. I had gotten married and divorced. Jill was 3. I was in California. Jill kept getting sick, and in Silicon Valley in the 70s, everybody worked. There was no place for a sick child. I would be at work at Denny's waiting on 200 people a day. The daycare would call and say that Jill was sick, and I would just be stuck, and it kept happening. So I called my mother in Florida and asked her, could I bring Jill to Florida, and that I would get a waitress job, I would get an apartment and a babysitter, and the only thing I needed her to do was babysit Jill when Jill was sick. And she said she would do that, and that was what brought us back to Florida.
Okay.
Let me know if I'm going on too much with this.
Oh, no, it's okay. And she was in the Harmony, North Carolina location of Teen Challenge?
Yes. Do you know where that location is?
I am not too familiar with North Carolina at all.
Yeah, oh, Lord. We drove to Statesville, and then we drove to a town called Statesville. And from Statesville, you drive about somewhere between 20 and 40 miles to Harmony. So altogether, I think you're like 70, 80 miles from Asheville.
Okay.
We put her on a plane to Asheville.
And you drove up to get her after 6 months?
Yes. What happened, I was told that she would be in phase 1 for 6 months. I begged them to keep her in Florida, and they insisted there was no bed space in Florida, and the closest place was the one in Harmony, North Carolina. So they said we had to buy a round-trip ticket, or it was either buy the ticket or provide the money for a ticket home. I forget which. So we put her on a plane, and she flew into Asheville, and someone from the facility drove up to the airport and picked her up.
Was she escorted to Teen Challenge by someone other than you? Did escorts pick her up, or did she travel on her own?
There was an escort that picked her up at the airport.
Okay, but did you see her off at the airport in Florida, and then someone picked her up at the airport in Asheville?
Yes, we did see her off from the airport in Florida.
Okay. I was just wondering if she was accompanied by anyone during the flight, or if there was a escort service either provided by it's basically a teen transport. I was wondering if there was a teen transport involved where someone from Teen Challenge or some supposedly independent agency was in charge of monitoring her in transit.
No, she was on the plane by herself.
Okay. Were you denied contact with her at all? Was she denied contact with you or other family while she was there?
I think at first I was. This is going back a long way, but I think there was a period of time where we were not allowed to see her. There were a number of times when I would call and was denied contact as far as phone calls.
Right. Do you know if her calls are monitored?
They didn't tell me if they were. Jill said they were.
Okay. That's pretty common. And it's not appropriate, but it's common. She should be able to talk to you without a staff present.
Yeah, she couldn't talk to me without somebody being there. I know they monitor the calls.
You said she was on phase 1. She was on phase 1 the entire time she was there?
Yes. She came within 2 weeks of completing phase 1. But had she completed it, that was where she would have been sent to phase 2 out of Albuquerque.
Okay. Oh, so it was a different program. The phase 1 was all done at this North Carolina, and then the phase 2 was to take place in New Mexico?
Yes, that's when I put my foot down.
Okay. Do you know how many phases or levels were in their system?
They didn't tell me.
Okay.
They didn't tell me how far she would go with it.
Do you know if she was forced to provide labor for them at all?
She was forced to do tasks around the facility. The way she described it was horrifying. I didn't hear about that part until our discussion in 2009. I knew the girls had chores to do. I saw that with my own eyes when we went up there. They would have kitchen duty, cooking, cleaning, and all that, but I found out later they were forced to clean the bathroom that they weren't allowed to use. When we went up to the facility to pick her up, at first the Wheelers didn't know we were taking her out, and they were very friendly to us. They took us on a tour of the facility, and they showed us the bathroom that Jill is referring to in her email. It had a beautiful jacuzzi with a bench around it, and Mrs. Wheeler made the comment to me, this is where the girls like to sit and do their devotions in the morning. And she didn't mention the fact that the girls were not allowed to use that bathroom. She just didn't say anything about that. Jill told me later, as she had referred in her email to you, that the girls had to clean the bathroom for the Wheelers and that they were given 2 ratty torn-up sponges that they had to share. Jill later told me that if they didn't have a sponge, they had to take scouring powder and use their fingers.
Wow.
And I saw the pool that she referred to. I cannot remember. It wasn't in any condition for swimming, I know that. But I didn't know that Jill was being forced to go into that water. I would have probably called the authorities on the spot.
Right. Was the water, it was really filthy?
Yeah, it was green slime water.
Oh.
And, I mean, going in there, it would subject somebody to hepatitis, a bladder infection, a number of things, not to mention the fact that you could be injured because you couldn't see through the water.
Right. And there could be things in the water. Things.
Exactly.
Water
there probably were.
moccasins or who knows what. I don't know if there would be water moccasins, but...
they have copperhead snakes up there. I mean, it could be anything. And going into water like that you can't see through. And I don't even know why they forced her to go in there to clean the pool. It would have had to have been drained and refilled to be used.
Right. It's probably part of a humiliation tactic, degrading.
Probably so. There were other humiliation tactics that I was told about. My mother kept in contact with the Wheelers even more than I did. She was very eager about this program. When she told me that Jill, the day that we put Jill on the plane, she called me and told me that she had spoken with Mrs. Wheeler, and we sent Jill up there with a carton of cigarettes. I permitted Jill to smoke, and they had taken her cigarettes away and thrown them into the fire. Apparently anything that you couldn't have, they would throw into a fire, and you had to stand there and watch it burn. My mother said she started crying as they burnt her cigarettes.
Oh.
So, I know, I kind of thought, oh, well,
yeah.
She's 14. So it was just kind of a thing like, we're taking this away from you and you can watch it burn. The girls were not allowed to have a picture of a boy with long hair. I don't know if Jesus was included in that rule, but they couldn't have anything like that. So they would just take away anything that they felt Jill shouldn't have.
Did her credits transfer that she earned there? Did she earn any transferable educational credits?
No, there actually was no academic education, which couldn't possibly have been legal.
Right.
That's right. We had taken her out of school in order to send her to Teen Challenge. So she just went through 6 months of no education.
Wow.
Just reading the Bible. My mom told me, and Mrs. Wheeler said they just had to sit there and do their Bible lessons, and that was that.
Wow.
It resulted in Jill never attended high school. She had tried to go back to school when we brought her back, and she went back to the 8th grade, but she was just having so many problems in school that I finally took her out, and she never went to high school as a result of that. I never saw what it would be like to go to a high school prom or be a high school student. And finally, when she got older, she decided she wanted her education, so she got a GED and took some college courses on her own.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say? Those are all the questions that I had pre-written.
Let's see. I would have to say that when they insisted on sending her to New Mexico, I was familiar with the fact that people that are taken out into the desert area in Arizona and New Mexico often don't come back alive. This would happen with a lot of the counterculture groups in California. I was familiar with it going back to the 70s. So that set off an alarm in my head right there. They were so insistent about it, I don't know if it was just, it seemed like it was a mother's instinct or something that just told me, do not let her go out into the desert. They tried, when we were up there and we they told us we could take her out for a soda or something. We went to the Cracker Barrel. We sat down. My husband asked Jill, do you think you can behave if you come home? And Jill said yes. So we told her, okay, we're going to go back and get your things, and we're going to take you home. We went back to the facility with Jill, and we told them we were taking her out of the program. They tried to make me feel guilty. They said, well, she's 2 weeks away from getting her certificate. Why don't you let her just stay the 2 weeks and get the certificate? And I was afraid that they would snatch her up and take her out to New Mexico.
Right.
And so I told them no. I said, no, she doesn't need her certificate. We'll take her home. That's fine. We'll deal with the problems at home. And Mrs. Wheeler said, well, you've already paid for a round-trip ticket. What about all this money and everything? And I told them, well, just use the ticket for some other girl that needs it. You can just keep the money, consider it a donation. I'm taking Jill out of here today. And Jill had been receiving SSI because her father had died when she was 10 years old. I had been Teen Challenge. I had been giving them most of the SSI. Some of it I had been banking, but they were getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $300 a month. And I considered that kind of like child support.
Right.
Mrs. Wheeler stated to me that she just didn't know what they were going to do because Jill was the only paying resident there and that they were going on donations. So I told her, well, I'm really sorry about that, but I just don't feel that Jill can stay in Teen Challenge. And besides, you want to send her away anyway. You wouldn't be getting the money anyway.
Right.
The only other thing I could state is I would say the same thing to families as what Jill put in her email is if you're having problems with a child, you really, really need to give it serious thought before you send them away to a facility. When we got to Tennessee, my grandmother took me to the side, and she told, because my grandmother was the very same one who kept me when I was sent away.
Right.
And she told me, she said, look, Sharon, you know how you felt when your mother sent you away and sent you to live with me. And I told her, yes, I felt terrible. I was thrown away by my family. And she said, yes, and your family never got you back again as a child. And Jill is 14 years old. Before you know it, she is going to be grown and gone. And if you throw away these years between now and the time that she's an adult, you can never get them back again.
Right.
And she called my mother for me and told my mother that we were in her living room in Tennessee. And that way my mother couldn't yell at me because it was my mother's mother.
Right.
But I have to say, families really need to consider this because, like Jill said in the email, even if you get your loved ones back, they may not be the same.
Right.
In my case, I got her back, but now she's gone forever. I would give my life to undo having sent her to Teen Challenge.
Hello? Hello, is this Cindy?
It's Cindy.
Hi, Cindy.
This is Cindy.
Hi, it's Angela with HEAL.
Hi, Angela.
Are you ready? Do you want to just start with the questions and go from there?
Sure.
Okay. When did Parents Against Teen Challenge of New Mexico begin organizing?
After a Child Protective Services call was made to the boys' facility in Clayton, New Mexico, there are two facilities at Teen Challenge of New Mexico, or there were. One was for girls, and that is in Harris, ages 14 to 18, and then they had a facility for boys 14 to 18 in Clayton.
Okay.
A staff member became very concerned. He'd only been there a short time and had previously worked at some other Teen Challenges, and there were multiple issues that he was growing increasingly concerned about. and one was pumping the septic tank out onto the ground. The boys were being asked to do that on an ongoing, regular basis. I believe their student handbook instructed the boys to do this twice a week.
Wow.
So,
and this is the photo that you shared. One of the photos was the boys doing that.
Yes, they're doing that, and they have, if you notice, like shorts and T-shirts on. There's no, protective clothing. And a septic tank has informed me that there's over, 100,000 types of bacteria in sewage. So it's very unsafe. It is against the law, actually.
Yeah.
So there was an ongoing argument between the staff member and the director, Lynn Hall, who is also my dad, where they were arguing back and forth. The staff guy was like, I'm not doing that. It's illegal. And Lynn pressed and finally went around him to another staffer and had them do that. So he took photos and contacted the EPA and Child Protective Services and the Sheriff's Department, and they were subsequently closed down as a result. I believe Child Protective Services substantiated the complaint. They then instructed the directors, Lynn and Kathy Hall, to either send students home or they would be back the next day to remove the children from the home.
Oh, wow.
So there was an EPA fine, I believe, or an investigation at least. I have not personally witnessed or seen, the result of that. I have seen the CPS complaint was substantiated, so I have confirmation of that. That center, to the best of my knowledge, wasn't reopened.
Okay.
And at the same time, the way that came to my attention is I had sent my son to go to that program. He was never put in the program against my, I was not notified of that until 9 months after he was there.
Oh, wow.
When my parents asked me to voluntarily sign custody of him over to them, I said, absolutely not. He is to be in that program and then come home after 18 months. So after a lengthy court battle, the judge, said, I can tell you're a good mom, but because you had to send your child to a program, you're not able to meet his needs, so I'm giving custody of him to your parents.
Oh, wow.
That completely shocked this particular staffer. And about 2 months after the 2 weeks after the center was closed, the facility was closed, he got in touch with me through a blog where there had been multiple complaints of children having to eat moldy food, even sexual advances from Lynn to the girls. There was, lots of things that you and I, a normal person would say that's abuse.
Right.
He contacted me and said I was completely shocked that you lost custody of your son. And, he said, I would ask your parents, is she on drugs? Is she on an alcoholic? No. Is she abuse him or neglect him? No. Well, then why are you taking him away from her?
Right.
Why are you taking this kid away from his mom? I don't understand. And he said they would never give him an explanation. And then he was watching them abuse kids, and it caused him, he found it upsetting. So he got in touch with me and began to give me information so that I could go back to court and regain custody of my son. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. We did attempt it, and it became obvious that the judge was going to milk out, time it out till he was 18, milk me for every penny I had, and probably still not give me my kid back. It was obvious she knew she had made a mistake, but she wasn't going to actually admit that in court. And so it was kind of like, well, next best thing is let's just drag this out till this kid's 18, and then it won't be my problem anymore.
Right.
So after talking with lots of students and getting emails from them and them kind of telling me what they went through, I found it eye-opening and upsetting, of course, that my family would be involved in that. But
right.
It seems to be more common than you would think, where individuals claim to be, religious people and good people, and they open up some type of camp or a ranch for troubled youth, and then they're abusive. They
right.
either beat them or inappropriately isolate them. I've heard of strip searches being done in a way that was just strange, alarming. And a lot of parents don't know what their child is going through at these places because communication between kids and parents is very limited and very monitored. And there were, they don't have access to phones to call for help.
Right.
They're told, they're told things that will cause them to be afraid. And sometimes it's years after they get home that they actually tell their parents what they've been through. And at that point, the statute of limitations is over, and so no criminal action can be filed. And this just continues. So we're working in New Mexico to introduce legislation with Senator Michael Padilla that would give Child Protective Services more authority over these type of facilities, any facility housing two or more non-family members
Right.
in a residential facility, rather than, they're right now kind of protected under, if they're not listed as a teen rehabilitative facility, they're a camp or they're a ranch or something. They fall outside the parameters of requiring licensing. So nobody checks on these kids to make sure they have the proper nutrition or education or medical care, and it's frightening, what we've seen them, people do. And I had a conversation with one of the top guys over at Child Protective Services in New Mexico, and I said to him, I said, what you're telling me is that a pedophile can get released from prison, go to your state, open up a camp or something and say he's helping troubled kids, and just rape the crap out of him until he finally gets caught, which could be, 20, 30 years.
Right.
And he got real quiet, and he goes, yes, ma'am, that's what I'm telling you. And I said, well, we got to work to change your laws, because that is really scary.
Yes, very.
You guys need to have inspections. You need to have minimum requirements, no matter what kind of organization it is. If they have children in their care, there's absolutely no reason why there shouldn't be oversight to protect the safety and well-being of those children. So that's kind of how that whole effort started. Is the involvement of my own son, and what was really happening over there, it just blew my mind.
Right.
I knew my parents had some problems, but I had no idea they were as severe as they are.
So, do we have a number for the new bill that Padilla's introduced, or has?
I'm still waiting for him to get that information to me. I think that they're working on it.
Okay.
So I'm not certain. I'm sure when he has the draft ready to go, he'll give me a copy of it.
That's no problem. And do you know if there's going to be any changes made from the original bill? He submitted the SB 252.
I'm not certain. We've looked at a standalone bill. We've looked at revising that particular bill to just simply include any residential facility housing two or more non-family members would qualify under the regulations that govern foster homes or any other type of residential facility. There's a lot of residential facilities in New Mexico for at-risk youth or children who've been abused or abandoned by their parents. There's group homes and so forth. A lot of those are accepting state and or federal funding. So they're regulated due to that. What you run into with unregulated facilities is they may be a private facility that operates on donations, like Teen Challenge.
Right.
Or they're charging a fee to the parents. The parents may pay, $2,500 a month to have their child there. So it's a privately funded organization where there's no government funds being used to support it. And that is where you're running into these facilities are unregulated, and there's been two of them in New Mexico now that have had media coverage due to abuse and or neglect of these youth that they're saying they're helping.
Right.
One of them was Tierra Blanca Ranch, actually was on the national news for 3 days because the director, I guess, had a subpoena or a search warrant issued, and he took the kids and ran.
Wow.
And apparently took them all home, but for 3 days nobody knew where they were.
Wow.
There were Amber Alerts issued and so forth, and that was quite a media frenzy on that one. That was in New Mexico. So due to the two different, these two facilities having negative press coverage and an exposure to their problems, then it became obvious something needed to be done in that state to regulate any facility that takes care of children, just to act in the best interest and safety of the kids that they're caring for.
Right.
Not everybody has really good intentions. There are people who just misrepresent who they are and what they're about, and they make it look like to parents and to the public that they're doing some good things, but they're harming these kids.
Right.
So, or they cut corners, and when you're dealing with a child's health or nutrition or education, you cannot cut corners. These parents, unfortunately, are told something when they go to make that decision to send their child. They're given information that's misinformation
right.
as to what the facility has to offer. So, then once their child comes home and starts describing, what's really happening, then it's a problem. And some of these kids have tried to join the military or get in college only to find out their high school diploma isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Wow.
That's one problem that they've had. I've had parents tell me that their child, that the behavioral problems were worse when they got home. They were very angry. And, that's indicative of an abused child.
Right.
So once these kids started explaining what they'd been through, it's emotional abuse, it's physical abuse and neglect, then they act out. So that was obviously disappointing to a parent who's trying to save their child and get it back on track, and that kid comes home and ends up in jail and, worse than ever.
Right.
You're kind of wondering, well, what happened over there that made this worse? So it's very important that when a parent decides to send their child to any type of corrective program, that they really check it out good. There's a lot of information on the internet. They need to go in and do inspections randomly and not announce that they're coming.
Right.
They need to make sure that their child, it's their child. They have the right and the responsibility to ensure their child's safety. So I know Teen Challenge of New Mexico is very, very much against that. They would not allow parents to come without an appointment. They limit the visit to 2 hours. There's always a staff member right there. So a parent has the right to pull their kid aside alone and say, "Are you okay? Are they eating right? If you're sick, do they take you to the doctor?"
Right.
There's been a lot of reports. There's been a lot of reports at Teen Challenge of New Mexico. Kids were very ill, were not taken to the doctor, and it had experienced some very negative repercussions in their health as a result. That's just irresponsible.
Right.
That's just irresponsible. So there needs to be some oversight, without question.
Definitely. Was there anything else you'd like to add about that?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. We're really hopeful to be able to get some laws in place to just protect kids.
Right.
When you're dealing with children, it suddenly moves itself up to the very top of the priority list. This is not something that should just be blown off. It's a very serious matter. It's other people's children, and it's organizations representing themselves as an assistance program for parents who are having some problems getting their child to just grow up to be a responsible, productive adult.
Right.
And the last thing you think you're doing is signing your kid up to get abused and hurt. So I think that we all as adults have an obligation to protect children and take whatever measures we need to make sure that they're safe and in a secure place and in a place where they can grow and flourish and not be beat down or starved to death or have some type of deficiency. And as a parent, when you trust someone to help you with that because they advertise that's what they do, then we need to hold those organizations accountable.
Right.
They need to do what they say. And if they won't, then we need to there needs to be some consequences.
Definitely.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a good day.